we're going to start out today with, which is the idea of, what kind of opens the door? What unlocks the door? And we think about things we want to understand. We want to understand life. We want to understand spiritual life more. We want to have a deeper spiritual life. And what is it that will unlock the door and allow that progression, I guess, for lack of a better word, that progression to take place? And there's a fascinating answer to it. I'm going to read for you the answers out of the book Secrets of Heaven. And this is Secrets of Heaven number 3153, making some fascinating points about what actually unlocks the door. From doctrine that neighborly kindness is what religious truth is introduced into and unites with, or that this occurs in the rational mind. We need to learn this. This is beautiful. Neighborly kindness leads our thoughts to the truth. That's so interesting. Religious truth no longer directs our thoughts to neighborly kindness, but neighborly kindness leads our thoughts to truth. That's the full sentence. And it's talking about neighbor. Here's this beautiful thing. Let's just use kindness. We don't even have to have the word neighborly on it, but just simple, grace-filled kindness. And kindness can be this introductory thing that starts to open the door. And then what happens as we see it is that this kindness starts to open the door, and that kindness starts to open us up. And then all this truth, all these concepts start to inflow into that, ways to move forward in the world, ways to act, ways to help other people, questions about how best to help other people. And then it's no longer religious truth that's kind of driving the train. In other words, I'm not like a righteous warrior with a sword of truth. What's driving the train at this point then becomes kindness. And kindness will start to create its own particular logic. And that's really important. Kindness starts to create its own particular logic. But it's one that God infills. And so truth becomes more and more driven by kindness. Kindness leads to truth. Like that last phrase there, so important. Kindness leads our thoughts to the truth. Now, how might this work? Well, just imagine, again, you have somebody who is struggling, for example, with addiction, and we're trying to come at it with a lot of compassion. We're trying to come at it out of kindness, and that kindness should drive our thoughts a certain direction. And when they drive it a certain direction, it'll lead us to see certain things and make certain decisions and to pick a certain path. And it allows for the truth to become more and more clear. Now, kindness doesn't always necessarily mean just rolling over and doing nothing, or just sort of a sloppy kindness. Like a sloppy kindness isn't really kind a lot of the time. It's a little like, you may think you're kind if somebody has a big like goober on their face at a fancy dinner, and you may think it kind not to say anything. Is that really the kind thing to say? Probably not. Probably the kindest thing to do is to, give them a little signal. Simple example, but that example is true for bigger things as well. And it's why kindness is the key. Kindness is what unlocks the door. And when you marry that kindness, which with what in our theology is called the desire for truth, in other words, curiosity. When you start to marry those two, like I'm really going to try to work to being a kind person, and I'm really going to keep the edges soft and be curious about how that looks, God's going to inflow with all kinds of answers, and we can find them all kinds of places. We can find them in Revelation. We can find them by reading the Word. We can find it by prayer. We can find it by conversations with people, and it always comes down to sort of revelation on one side, experience on the other. Revelation meaning textual things, things we can read, experience on the other. And those really start to inflow in this beautiful, beautiful way and start to flower and give birth to something on the other side. So that's why, friends, like when I hear that the Dalai Lama, somebody asked, I believe it was the Dalai Lama. Somebody on here probably knows and should put it in the comments to make sure that I have this right. But Dalai Lama, or someone of that caliber, we'll say, was once asked, what's the religion? And they said, kindness is my religion. And there really is some truth to that. I mean, of course, doctrine's a beautiful thing. Of course, this is how we set up, this knowledge. But remember, friends, that what I just read to you about kindness being significant in the way that it drives us to the truth, more so than religious truth. That's interesting. I'm reading that out of a canonical book from the New Church. So I'm reading a doctrinal book that's constantly reminding us, look, it's not all about doctrine. There's something beautiful about that, and we miss that, and we can think, oh, kindness just is this kind of sloppy. No, we have to read this stuff, we have to understand this stuff, we have to figure this out. We have to allow kindness to drive us. We have to allow that desire for truth to give birth to a curiosity that pushes us out there into the world, and helps us to just become better and better at serving other people. So friends, today, simple takeaway, allow kindness to drive your life today, and to make sure that this kindness has this beautiful sort of aroma of curiosity to it, that you're just open to the experience that God's going to give you today. You're going to look at it from kindness. You're going to act with kindness. Maybe that kindness will have you make a stand in a certain way, or not make a stand in a certain way. I don't know. But just trust it. Trust kindness. That is the rock we can really build our lives on. So I hope that makes sense, friends. I think it's a pretty darn amazing concept in so many ways. So with that, dear friends, what we're going to do now is we're going to shift gears. And when we shift gears here at New Church Live, we come in for a gentle landing. For those of you joining us the first time, there's always at least a handful of people who are. This is where we do a little meditation using an Old Testament passage, go back to the Lord's Prayer, which is in the New Testament, and then finish with the Levitican blessing, which is in the Old. And then we will say hi to anyone who has joined us on Facebook. So with that, dear friends, let's get a little breath. Little meditation. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Our Father, who art in the heavens, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so upon the earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you, bring you peace, and bring you home. Amen. All right, dear friends, let's take a little look-see, see if anyone was able to join us over here on our Facebook page. And again, do hope you all had a wonderful 4th of July weekend. We had a lot of storms here, but it certainly was a really fun weekend in so many ways. All right, Marcus, good morning to you, buddy. And again, thanks for all your hard work on Sunday. I thought that service turned out well. Thank you to the sermon writing team for their help with all of those things. They are an invaluable resource. All right, so let's take a look here. Linda writes, thank you, important message. Yeah, it really is. And that kindness thing, right, Linda, it attaches back to the Sunday service where we're talking about it, where we can be consumed about being right, looking for the right, or looking for the good. And looking for the good is clearly part of this whole kindness thing. Patty, right? Patty. Yeah, thank you, Patty, for saying that. Yeah, just be kind. That's simple. Frank, my dear buddy, hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. All right, dear friends. Well, listen, God bless all of you. Have a wonderful, very kind day, and we will